Imagine a quiet swamp teeming with life, where the air is thick with mist and the calls of hidden creatures echo through the dawn. The water glimmers with the first rays of sunlight, and every inch of the landscape seems untouched, ancient, and alive. Here, water seeps through the earth, nourishing a tangled web of roots and reeds. Tall grasses sway gently in the breeze, sheltering frogs, insects, and birds that have made this place their home for generations. But beneath this tranquil scene, something extraordinary is about to happen. Deep underground, hidden from the eyes of the world, a man-made star is about to be born, not in the sky, but in the very heart of the Earth itself. This isn't the plot of a science fiction novel. It's a true story, one that unfolded in the shadowy corners of the Cold War, on the day we unleashed the unimaginable power of the atom in one of nature's most delicate environments. Why bring nuclear fire to a swamp? The answer lies in a mix of curiosity, fear, and the relentless drive to understand, and perhaps control, the fundamental forces of the universe. Scientists and military minds alike were determined to push the boundaries of what was possible no matter the cost. They wanted to see how the ground would react to a wound so deep and violent, to study the effects of a nuclear blast on the Earth itself. The swamp became their laboratory, its soil and water the test subjects for an experiment unlike any other. The location was chosen for its unique geology, a specific kind of rock deep beneath the surface that scientists believed would reveal new secrets about the power they were about to unleash. The swamp's isolation made it the perfect place for a dangerous experiment, far from prying eyes. The life within it, frogs, birds, and countless unseen creatures, became collateral in a much larger equation. The fate of the swamp was weighed against the promise of knowledge, and the scales tipped in favor of progress. Let's journey back to an era of tension and scientific leaps, when the fate of the world seemed to hang in the balance. The Cold War was a time of secrets, of bold experiments and even bolder risks, all in the name of national security and scientific discovery. We're going to a place where science and secrecy met, where the quiet hum of nature was about to be shattered by the roar of machines and the ambitions of humankind. The swamp, once peaceful, would never be the same. This is the story of detonating humanity's most powerful creation in the soft, wet heart of the Earth. A moment when the boundaries between nature and technology, peace and destruction, were forever blurred. The story of a nuclear bomb in a swamp, and the secrets the planet revealed in the aftermath. What did we learn, and what did we lose, when fire met water in the heart of the wild? Our story unfolds in the vast, rugged expanse of the American West, in the year 1968, a time when the world was gripped by tension and uncertainty. This was the height of the Cold War, a period defined by suspicion, secrecy, and a relentless arms race between two superpowers. The United States and the Soviet Union competed fiercely, racing to build and test ever more powerful nuclear weapons, each side determined to outdo the other in a dangerous game of brinkmanship. But these battles weren't fought on traditional front lines. Instead, remote and desolate places became strange new battlefields, not against armies, but against the very limits of physics and the unknowns of the natural world. In the heart of Nevada, the Central Nevada Test Site, a lonely, wind-swept high desert, was selected for a test unlike any before it. The target, Hot Creek Valley, a surprising patch of swampy, waterlogged land perched atop ancient volcanic tuff, surrounded by arid wilderness. Scientists faced a daunting question. How would a massive underground nuclear explosion behave in this soft, saturated, and unpredictable geology? The ground here was unlike any other test site, and the risks were unknown. This experiment was part of the ambitious Plowshare program, which sought to find peaceful uses for nuclear explosions. The test was named Project Faultless, a bold attempt to harness atomic power for potential engineering marvels. The goal was clear: achieve a flawless, faultless detonation, and determine if this remote site could withstand something even larger, perhaps paving the way for future nuclear projects. Deep beneath the marshy surface, they buried a 1-megaton bomb, an explosive force more than 50 times greater than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima, hidden far below the earth and water. For the scientists, the swampy ground was just another variable in a world-altering experiment, one that could change the course of history or unleash unforeseen consequences. The fate of this isolated patch of Earth was now tied to the global balance of power, as the world's eyes turned to Nevada, waiting for the outcome. Across the globe, people watched anxiously, families gathered around televisions, leaders monitored reports, hoping the ground would hold and disaster would be averted. Yet, as the countdown began, one thing was certain: nature, with all its unpredictability, had its own plans for this strange battlefield. Project Faultless was a dress rehearsal for a 5-megaton test. The question: could Hot Creek Valley's ground contain a nuclear blast, or would it vent radioactive material? Months of preparation followed, drilling a shaft over 3,200 feet deep, lowering the bomb, and installing a web of sensors. Seismometers, pressure gauges, and radiation detectors turned the valley into the most monitored patch of Earth on the planet. The bomb, a sleeping giant, waited at the bottom of the shaft. The scientists' calculations would soon be tested by reality. All this effort focused on a single, infinitesimal moment: detonation. The world held its breath. Would the Earth contain the fury, or would it break? The answer was about to be revealed. Tension filled the days before the test. Every wire, sensor, and calculation was checked and rechecked. Lowering the bomb was a slow, delicate process. Once in place, the shaft was plugged with sand, gravel, and concrete. This plug was the last barrier between the blast and the open air. On the surface, bunkers were set up and a safe perimeter established. As the countdown began, the site emptied. Only the bomb and sensors remained. In the control bunker, scientists watched their instruments, ready to trigger an underground earthquake. The final seconds ticked away. The fate of the valley and the future of high-yield testing rested on this moment. The button was pushed, the signal was sent. Deep beneath the swamp, a star ignited. January 19, 1968, 10:15 a.m. The signal arrived. Deep underground, the bomb fired. In a microsecond, a sphere of plasma erupted, vaporizing rock and creating a massive cavity. The ground swelled upward in a silent dome, as if the Earth itself was breathing. Observers felt a rolling jolt, an artificial earthquake. The stemming plug held. The radioactive fury was contained. The ground, lifted by 15 feet, settled, but not to its original position. The landscape was permanently changed. The sensors captured immense pressures and violent shaking. The test seemed a success. The genie was in the bottle, but the Earth was not finished responding. The energy had to go somewhere. The consequences would unfold over minutes, hours, and years. The ground had a secret to reveal. The scientists expected shaking, but not what came next. They had prepared for tremors, for the ground to rumble and shift, but the reality was far more violent and unpredictable than any of their models had suggested. As the seconds ticked by, the instruments began to spike wildly, registering forces that seemed almost impossible. The blast generated a magnitude 6.3 earthquake, felt as far as Las Vegas. Buildings swayed, windows rattled, and people hundreds of miles away were jolted from their routines, suddenly aware that something massive had happened deep beneath the Earth. Minutes later, aftershocks rippled through the region. The ground seemed to pulse with energy, as if the Earth itself was struggling to settle after the violent intrusion. Then, 4 miles from ground zero, a new fault line tore across the desert, a mile-long scar where the Earth dropped several feet. The landscape was forever changed, a visible reminder of the power unleashed below. The explosion hadn't just shaken the ground, it had broken it. The Earth was split open, revealing the raw, fractured layers beneath the surface. The wet, porous tuff transmitted the shock in a way no one predicted, causing the ground to fail spectacularly. Instead of absorbing the force, the saturated Earth amplified it, turning the swampy landscape into a zone of collapse and chaos. The implications were immediate and terrifying. Scientists scrambled to understand what had gone wrong, while emergency teams rushed to assess the damage and prevent further disaster. If 1 megaton could do this, what would 5 megatons unleash? The question hung in the air, unspoken but deeply felt by everyone present. The Earth was not the reliable container they'd hoped for. Instead, it had become a conduit for destruction, its weaknesses exposed by the force of the blast. Project Faultless, meant to prove safety, had revealed a hidden monster. The test site, once a symbol of control and confidence, now stood as a stark warning of nature's unpredictability. The planet had answered with a warning. In the aftermath, the message was clear. Beneath our feet lies a power we barely understand, and when disturbed, it can awaken with devastating consequences. The new fault line changed everything. Containment was no longer just about plugging a hole. The Earth itself could create escape routes for radiation. The planned 5-megaton test was cancelled. The risk was too great. The swampy, waterlogged ground had played a key role in the disaster. Geology was no longer a backdrop, but an active, unpredictable participant. Project Faultless became a landmark in geophysics, teaching scientists how the Earth's crust responds to extreme stress. The failure provided more knowledge than success ever could. The lesson: you cannot impose your will on the planet without consequences. The Earth responds, and not always as you expect. Project Faultless's aftermath rippled far beyond science. News of a man-made fault line fueled public fears and environmental activism. The idea of breaking the planet's crust with a bomb became a symbol of nuclear hubris. Activists called for a ban on all nuclear testing, arguing we didn't understand the risks. The Plowshare program's dream of peaceful nuclear explosions faded. The Central Nevada test site was abandoned. Future tests moved elsewhere. The era of ever larger bombs began to end. The Faultless test helped push the U.S. toward the Threshold Test Ban Treaty, limiting underground tests to a fraction of Faultless's power. The swamp story became a turning point in nuclear policy. The world had learned a hard lesson. Today, Project Faultless's site is quiet. A concrete cap marks the deep shaft, the land still scarred. The swamp is gone, the water table forever changed. The fault line remains a permanent reminder of that day. The experiment taught us more through failure than success. The Earth is not a passive stage. It's a dynamic system with its own history and power. When we unleash atomic forces, we test not just weapons, but our own wisdom. Project Faultless forced us to consider the long-term, geological consequences of our actions. The Earth can break and its response can be unpredictable. The Silent Valley spoke volumes, a warning from a wounded planet. The biggest surprises may lie not in the stars, but beneath our feet.